The next story I want to tell you about her love for people is so interesting for many reasons. First of all, as I said, the Rebbetzin was like a grandmother to everybody, or maybe a mother to everybody. It didn't matter if you were Lubavitch or you were not. It didn't matter. If you were a woman who spoke to her, she would give her entire love to you and speak to you and give you advice if you wanted. It just made you feel good. There was a young girl that her family lived in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where my mother's father had a shul. And I knew this family very well because I went to that shul quite often on Shabbos to my grandparents. And the girl was getting married, and she took an apartment in Rebbetzin Chana's building. For some reason, she liked Crown Heights. She had nothing to do with Lubavitch, but she liked the apartment. And when she went to set up her apartment, she noticed Rebbetzin Chana in the street. So she noticed it every time, and she was told she's the mother of the Rebbe. So one day she gives the Rebbe an invitation to her wedding. And she said, will you please come to my wedding? So Rebbe Chana said, oh, I'll come to your wedding. And she was so excited. She gave me the invitation, and the Rebbe said she'll come. This girl went and told everybody, the Rebbe's mother is coming to my wedding. When my mother heard this, my mother was horrified because it was in the winter. The wedding was going to take place in Manhattan. How in the world is the Rebbetzin going to get to the wedding in Manhattan in the winter at night? The Rebbetzin didn't have a driver. She didn't have a grandchild to drive her. She didn't have a nephew. Who was going to get her there? How was she going to get there? So my mother realized that this Kala didn't realize that the Rebbetzin doesn't have anyone to take her. Today we could order Uber. Today we could order a car service. But all the way back in the night, this must have been 1960, there was no way of ordering a car service. That concept didn't yet exist. You had to go onto a main street and hail a cab and say, taxi, taxi, and hopefully you'll get a taxi. So my mother was wondering, how is the Rebbetzin going to get there? So she decided to call up the mother of the Kala and tell her that you must have made a very big mistake because the Rebbetzin has no way to get to the wedding. I suggest you call her up and tell her, Rebbetzin, it's much too difficult for you to go. Could you please allow the Chassan Kala to come to your house for a blessing? And you give them a blessing and you don't have to come to the wedding. So my mother calls to the mother of the Kala, and they told her she's at the apartment in Crown Heights, setting up the apartment. And they have a phone. You can call her there. So my mother called her, and she explained to the mother, and the mother said, oh, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I feel terrible that the Rebbetzin should be so put in a position that she doesn't have how to get there, and it's winter, and it's cold. Okay, tomorrow morning I'm going to call her and I'm going to ask for the children to go for a bracha, for a blessing, and she should not have to come to the wedding. And she thanked my mother for bringing this to her attention. My mother hung up the phone, and the phone rings 1 minute later. I was in the kitchen with my mother, and Rebbetzin Chana is on the phone. My mother couldn't imagine what she wants from her. So the Rebbetzin says, tell me, why does it bother you that I want to go to the wedding of this girl called Debitzer? My mother had no clue how the Rebbetzin knew so quickly because she just hung up the phone from the other lady. So my mother said, who said that I care if you go to the wedding? Why do you think that I have something against you going? Because she had no clue that the Rebbetzin knew. So the Rebbetzin says, let me tell you, I picked up the phone to make a phone call. And there happened to have been a cross wire. Now, girls, today it doesn't happen, but years ago, in the same building, sometimes the wires got crossed, and you would pick up the phone, and you would hear a neighbor on the phone talking. So what happened was that Rebbetzin Chana told my mother, she picked up the phone to make a phone call. She heard my mother saying to this mother of the Kala, that it's so hard for the Rebbetzin to go. I heard your whole conversation, but I want to tell you, I want to go to the wedding because it's a very big mitzvah to make a Kala happy. So I don't want you to mix in. I am going to go to the wedding. So my mother said, Rebbetzin, I'm sorry, I'm not mixing in, and you can do whatever you want. And my mother figured, oh, I'm in such trouble. So my mother decided that tomorrow morning she was going to call this lady when she's at home in Manhattan, and she's going to tell her that the Rebbetzin heard the whole conversation. So the whole plan is not working. So the Rebbetzin wants to come to the wedding. So you just have to arrange a car to bring her and take her back because she is not taking no for an answer. She said it's a mitzvah to be Misameach the Kala. So the Rebbetzin went in the winter at night all the way to Manhattan. just to make a collar that she really had no connection to, but just a girl who asked her to come to a wedding, and she knew that she's going to make her happy. And it's such a big mitzvah to make a collar happy that the Rebbetzin went to her wedding.